Welcome. In this session, we are going to look at popular photo genres and the unique requirements of each. I will provide typical camera settings for each topic to give you a starting point. However, remember that these are just typical and not carved in stone. A photographer's creativity should always override what is typical. As we go through the examples, please take time to note the settings. Studying these settings offers another level of learning, and seeing how others set their camera will help you set yours. Let's start with landscape photography. Thanks to pioneers like Ansel Adams and his associates, we have widely accepted guidelines for this genre. You generally want tack sharp focus from the foreground to the background. To achieve this large depth of field, use a small aperture setting, typically f-stop 22 or smaller. Because of the small aperture setting, your shutter speed will have to be fairly long, making a tripod essential to compensate and maintain the sharpness of the image. Aperture priority is usually a good choice here. Also, keep in mind that the best light happens at sunrise and sunset, ideally coming from your side rather than directly behind you to enhance colors and emphasize details. Cityscapes in daylight are very similar to landscapes, meaning you will generally use a very small aperture like f22 for a sharp image from foreground to background. But the best time of day for cityscapes is twilight, where there is enough light to clearly see everything without having the lights overpower the image. This requires a large aperture like f1.8 to f5.6. By nightfall, a smaller aperture like f16 can be more effective, and long exposures will produce interesting streaks of light from passing vehicles. Similarly, architecture photography relies on a medium to small aperture, typically f8 to f22, to create a large depth of field. It is also best to use a tripod. Lightning is a subcategory of landscape photography that requires some special techniques. If you hit the shutter release when you see a flash of lightning, you're already too late. You have to have your shutter open before the lightning strikes. Use a medium aperture between f8 and f11 and set a long exposure of 15 to 30 seconds depending on the frequency and intensity of the lightning strikes. With the shutter open, a strike of lightning will quickly end the exposure time due to the intensity of the light. A tripod is essential, and a remote shutter release is highly beneficial. A logical trick for focusing in the dark is to determine your camera lens's infinity point of focus during daylight, slice a piece of tape across the focus ring and lens body, and simply line up the tape at night. An alternative is to focus on a bright light at some distance, several miles at least. This could be a house window, or if you are lucky with minimal cloud coverage, a planet or a very bright star. Always remember to play the odds safely by shooting from a vantage point several miles from the actual storm. Portrait photography takes the exact opposite approach to landscapes. You want all the attention on the subject, so use a large aperture, typically f1.8 to f5.6, to create a shallow depth of field that blurs the background so it does not distract. The quality of the blurred background is referred to as the bokeh. A good bokeh has even color distribution, while a poor bokeh is very splotchy. The most important characteristic is to sharply focus on the eyes. Photographing public art is a lot like portrait photography, but you don't have to pose your subject. And you can experiment with different angles and lighting without tiring your model, paying close attention to details like variations in the patina. When photographing performers or wildlife, shutter speed is the primary consideration. To stop action and prevent blurring, you want a fast shutter speed, 1/500th to 1/2000th, and you should utilize your camera's continuous fire mode to capture several images per second. This will increase your odds of capturing the perfect moment. For wildlife, investing in a high-quality telephoto lens, 400mm or more, is critical so you can capture subjects in their natural setting without intruding upon their space. In nature photography, dealing with small insects or birds generally requires either macro lens to get very close to subjects that aren't likely to run away, or a telephoto lens to capture more skittish subjects like hummingbirds from a distance. For flowers, using a medium aperture of f8 to f16 provides a moderate depth of field. An effective presentation technique is to isolate the flower against a solid black background which can even create a 3D effect when printed on canvas. This overview should give you a good feel for the unique requirements of the categories covered. There are many other photography genres that have their own special requirements. Wedding photography is a common entry point for many professional photographers. It combines architectural photography, portrait photography, and social gatherings. Each of these things have different aperture settings and shutter speeds. Also, the pros often have a preferred lens. When your interest is focused on a specific genre, do some additional research on that genre. If you are struggling with a particular genre or artistic technique, you might want to consider downloading a few stock photos that are close to what you have in mind. You can then check the embedded camera data to learn exactly what settings were used. It might be worth a few dollars to save yourself a lot of frustration and guessing. Once you master these basics, photography can be a constant source of joy and creative expression that enhances your life in ways you never expected. If you want to dive deeper into these subjects, check out my photography books at well-judge-photography.com/my-books. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching. Let's keep it simple.